Portugal is really slow. So slow. The sort of slow that would give a New Yorker a heart attack. Just from the stress of waiting for them to please, finally, get around to it. But it's worth it. This is what I really like about Portugal. They are in no hurry to get it right. And when they do get around to it, they certainly do get it right. This is a country with a rich heritage in true craftsmanship. And we're going to get a feel for the essence of the country through three of its key artisan products: cork, leather, and port wine. Let's start with the cork. Portugal's quiet superstar. Cork makes this country a lot of money. Serious money. In 2023, Portugal's cork exports hit an all-time record-breaking high, and they grossed 1.232 billion euros. That's about 1.3 billion US dollars. That is a massive amount of money spent to keep wine in a bottle, right? And by the way, over 900 million euros of that revenue is from bottle corks. So that's nothing to sniff at. But what about the remaining 400 million? Cork is surprisingly versatile as a material, and it is used for a huge range of products here in Portugal, from the soles of designer shoes to fancy handbags from modern boutiques. Cork is also sent into space. Cork from Portugal is used as insulation on spacecraft. In fact, cork has been a vital material in aerospace engineering pretty much since the beginning in the 1960s. And that's because it provides such exceptional insulation, low thermal conductivity, and resistance to extreme temperatures. Plus, of course, it's lightweight, and that makes a massive contribution to fuel efficiency. With that in mind, I'm surprised we don't have more cork boards on board this ship. Anyway, cork is produced from the cork oak tree, and this is amazing. Portugal produces over 60% of the world's supply of cork. Almost 2/3 of the cork on this planet comes from the Alentejo region, which is just south of Lisbon. And the process is, to this day, committedly manual and very slow. The cork oak tree is a protected species in Portugal, and it can only be harvested once every 9 years. And just to be sure here, that's not since birth. Stripping bark from the cork oak tree can only start once that tree has been growing for 25 years. If I were a cork oak tree, that means I would only have had my bark stripped once. And now I politely request that you all remove whatever image has just come to your mind. The act of stripping bark from the tree without harming it is delicate work. It's performed by artisan tradesmen known here as tiradores. And this is serious business. The tiradores, the cork strippers, are some of the most highly skilled and best paid agricultural workers in Portugal. And they earn every cent. They're armed with a simple hand axe, and they just have to slice the cork bark, but just deep enough to prise it away, not so deep that they wound the living tree underneath. Because there's no second chance. One bad cut can scar a cork oak for life. It takes about 10 years of an apprenticeship just to be trusted with the axe. And in the summer heat, they move through the cork forest, balancing that precision with strength, peeling great sheets off the trees at a time. It's not mass production, it's tree by tree, hand by hand, season by season. Now, if you want to be sure that the souvenir that you're buying is made of Portuguese cork, harvested and crafted following the traditional artisan methods, look for the Apcor stamp. And you're going to find loads of keepsakes here in Portugal. Coasters, keychains, bags, even shoes. In many ways, you could say that the locals use cork like it were leather. And they're pretty good when it comes to leather here too. So what's that about? Portugal's got a real knack for taking a raw material and turning it into something long-lasting. And leather's no exception. Now, leather's history in Portugal goes way back, centuries. But if you want to get really specific, you want to head to a small town called Alcanena, which is right in the center of the country. It's known as the capital of leather, and this town was built entirely around the art of tanning hides. And I mean tanning the old way, before chemicals, before industrial processes. Back then, it was all oak bark, water, and time. Tanning leather properly could take months. Soaking, stretching, drying, softening the hides until they were strong yet supple, durable enough to survive the saddle, the battlefield, or indeed the centuries. Leather work was so important in Portugal that traditional saddles, boots, belts, even book bindings almost became a national signature. The Alentejo region, the one that I mentioned earlier, where the cork heartland, also played a big part in leather. There, leather wasn't just a fashion item, it was practical. Saddles for working horses, bridles for oxen, sturdy boots for the farmers, for the shepherds. Everything had to be strong enough to last through dust, heat, and hard labor. And because these were handmade items, of course, no two pieces were exactly alike. So each piece has a bit of the craftsman's soul just stitched into it. Fast forward to today, and Portuguese leather has quietly earned a world-class reputation. It's the kind of leather that international designers like Hermes or Loewe quietly source when they want something that ages beautifully instead of falling apart after the first few years. But the real magic still lies in those small workshops, the artisans who are carrying on the traditions here by hand. In Lisbon, you'll find leather studios where belts are still hand-cut and stitched. You'll find bags that were still built one at a time, not spat out by some factory machine. You might stumble upon some shops with the label Artesanato Certificado, and that is the mark that you're looking for certified traditional craftsmanship. So if you see that stamp, you know you're looking at the real thing. Portuguese leather, typically soft, thick, and colored with natural dyes. So you'll often find earthy shades, browns, reds, ochres, because the tanning process here respects the material rather than trying to disguise it. And here's a little local wisdom. Good leather in Portugal should feel thick, but it should feel flexible. It should feel like it's already lived a life, but just has a few more decades left in it. If it's stiff, if it's plasticky, walk away. That's not the kind of craftsmanship we're here to celebrate. So whether you pick up a handmade wallet, a hand-tooled belt, a pair of beautifully stitched shoes, you'll be carrying home not just a souvenir, but a little bit of Portuguese patience, a lot of Portuguese pride, and of course tradition as well. And once you've handled the cork and you've tried the leather, well, there's only one thing left to do. That's sit down, pour a glass, and taste that Portuguese craft that really does get better the longer you leave it alone. Port. Port's got a fascinating story about how it came to be. And it starts, in a way at least, in the rugged Douro Valley, a steep and stony valley in northern Portugal, about 2 hours east of Porto. Now, the Douro Valley has a river running through it, the Douro River. It winds its way from Spain across Portugal and out into the Atlantic Ocean at Porto. And it's one of the most stunning landscapes in the whole region. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's the first demarcated wine region in the world, dating back to 1756. That is a full century before Bordeaux thought to do the same thing, by the way. And back then, they weren't making port wine here. They were making Douro wine, again, named after the river that runs through the valley. So where did the port come from? Why fortify the wine? Who decided that wine need added brandy? Well, we can blame the British for that. Back in the 17th century, the British were in a pretty much constant argy-bargy with France. Bad neighbors. And the French did something disgusting, outrageous, frankly unjustifiable. I'll tell you what they did to their sparring partners over the Channel in England. They stopped sending nice wine. Can you believe it? They stopped sending the horrible French wine too. They just stopped sending wine of any kind. If it wasn't a case of something French, it wasn't going over to Blighty. And that was causing a problem in England. So the Brits had to look for other options, and they appealed to Portugal to help satisfy their desperate need for a glass of red. But there was a problem. As much as the kind and caring Portuguese wanted to ensure that Les Rosboeuf would still be able to enjoy a glass of something rich and potent with their Sunday lunch, regular wine spoiled on the long, hot sea voyage north. So enter the clever merchants of Porto, because where there's a will, there's a way. And they started adding a splash of brandy during the fermentation to preserve the wine's sweetness and strength. Now, after fortification with the brandy, which is locally known as aguardente, the port wine is then aged in oak casks before they bottle it. Well, when the first bottles of this new fortified wine from Porto arrived in England, it ticked all the right boxes. Bold, rich, sweet, and not French. It was just what we wanted. And they didn't just drink it either. Oh no, they practically moved in. Have you ever looked at a bottle of port and thought, I didn't know Taylor was a Portuguese name. I don't know how many Portuguese Grahams there are or Sandmans. And that's because these big names in port weren't all Portuguese. The English liked port so much that they decided to set up shop in Porto, in Gaia themselves, building vast cellars to age their own wine in these giant oak barrels under the cool Atlantic air. It wasn't always smooth sailing, though. There were price wars, there were dodgy dealings, there were a few bad batches. That gave the industry a bit of a rough ride here and there. And that is why Portugal then officially stepped in. And in 1756, they created the world's first wine regulations, controlling where and how real port could be made. And that's the whole appellation system. This is where it came from, the system that protects champagne, Parmesan cheese, and all those other things. Portugal did it first. Today, real port has to come from the Douro Valley. And if you're doing it properly, the grapes are still crushed by foot in stone tanks called lagares. Why? Because mechanical crushers are too rough. They break the seeds. That gives the wine a bitter taste. Feet are gentler. Just best to think of something else whilst you're drinking the stuff. Given that we're heading across the Atlantic soon towards Canada, I want to tell you a surprising story about how port, genuine port, from Douro Valley, ended up aging in Newfoundland. But first, let's open up the portal, and we'll collect our two Portuguese ports of call. So, Lisbon is a fantastic terminal. It's pretty new, and you can see that there are a couple of options when it comes to the gangway. So we will find out which option we end up using on the day, but they've got a sky bridge going across, and they've also got the ramped one coming down to the dock side. Again, we'll find out when we arrive which one we'll be using. But inside the terminal, you've got Wi-Fi, toilets, there's some tourist information in there, there's a chance to get some currency if you would like to get some euros there. And there are taxis waiting outside. The credit card is in grey because you need to check with your individual taxi driver if they are able to take card payment if you prefer to pay on card. Let's have a look on the map. So here we go. We are sort of just at the edge of the main town centre. So it's a nice, easy walk to get in. You go out of the port, you turn left, and you follow along until you get to a monumental square. And that is where we're going to start our top 10. So the Praça do Comércio, it feels like Lisbon's grand front porch. Yellow arcaded buildings framing a vast open square with the Tagus just glittering beyond. This is your postcard perfect spot. Until someone sidles up to you, weed. Weed. Yeah, they don't answer how much, no. But it's quite common here. They come up, a little whisper, flashing a little plastic bag. It's unlicensed, it's unwanted, definitely not recommended. Ignore it. Just instead, let your eye wander to the stone balances by the water. These are artists of patience and gravity. They stack rocks into these precarious little sculptures, and they'll smile at you with a hat. So if you look, be careful. Tourists will photograph them. Locals stroll through. The trams rattle by. It's a living square. It's elegant, a little chaotic. It's sun-drenched. And once you're done admiring the view, head through that dramatic, magnificent arch, the Arco da Rua Augusta, because it's time to go shopping. So, Lisbon city centre shopping couldn't be easier, even if it is a bit hilly. Once you head through the Arco da Rua Augusta, you arrive on the central shopping street, which is flanked by even more shopping streets. And this is the part of town where you'll be able to find anything. Shoes, clothes, bags, belts, books, electronics, food, everything's here. There are some great cafes and restaurants that spill out into the street. Locals and tourists sit out and eat, absolutely wrapped up in the buzz of the city centre. It does get busy, and it is a pickpocketer's paradise, but it's also a city lover's paradise too. Okay, now let's get really hilly. If you want to visit the Cathedral of Lisbon, you'd better be prepared for a climb. Sé de Lisboa sits like a stone guardian above the Alfama district. It's all Romanesque bulk and weathered grandeur. It's got tram 28 runs up to it, so that's an easy way to get up if you don't want to do the walk. Rattles right past the front door. But inside, it's cool, it's austere, a mixture of Gothic arches, ancient tombs, candlelit silence. Outside, the tuk-tuks hum, the tourists puff. The view just slips down into the waterway. It's wonderful. It was built in the 12th century after the Christian reconquest here, and it is Lisbon's oldest church. And it looks it. It's a bit crooked, maybe a bit haunted, utterly enduring. And overlooking the whole city from the top of the hill, Castelo de São Jorge. It's Lisbon's medieval crown, a Moorish fortress turned into a royal palace. Now it's a panoramic perch above the terracotta rooftops. The climb is steep, but it's worth every step. Inside, the towers, cobbled paths, they wind past olive trees in the battlements. And an unexpected gem is that camera obscura. Now, I mentioned a camera obscura coming up in Cadiz. Here's another opportunity. This one is hidden in the Tower of Ulysses, one of the towers here, and it projects a live 360-degree view of the city. It gets busy, yes, but between the stones of the sky, there really is a true sense of history in this place. Let's pick somewhere just really close to the port now. Less walking. You're just going to hop across, and then we're going to go somewhere for lunch. Museu do Fado, really short walk into Alfama, and this is the perfect introduction to Portugal's most haunting tradition. It's a small but deeply atmospheric museum, and it explores fado, that soulful music of longing, of love, of Lisbon's old neighborhoods. And you'll hear voices like Amália Rodrigues, and you'll see vintage guitars there and explore how fado shaped the identity of working-class Lisbon. And it's all set inside a former water pumping station. Yeah, industrial bones, musical soul, right next to the port. Quick visit, 45 minutes or so, but it hits deep. Time Out Market Lisboa is a no-brainer for lunch. Buzzing food hall inside the historic Mercado de Ribeira. And this is about a 30-minute walk if you were to walk across from the port. Think of it as Portugal's greatest hits menu. Michelin star chefs with gourmet burgers, with pastéis de nata, craft beer, great wine, all under one roof. It's perfect for going out with a group with different tastes because everybody gets from their own, comes together in the middle. You grab a tray, you find a seat at one of those long communal tables that runs through the hall, and you soak in the energy. It's casual, it's tasty, it's very, very local, but don't go starving because the queues can be quite long. So you want to go before you get too hungry. Now, some of you will feel like you've already seen this building once before, and you sort of have, in Mindelo, Cape Verde. But this one's the original, and it's a significant site. Torre de Belém was built in the early 1500s to guard the entrance to Lisbon's harbour. It's a jewel of Manueline architecture. It's covered in maritime carvings, in turrets, in stone ropes. Portugal's age of discovery was carved into this limestone. And it was once surrounded by water, but now it sits a few steps from the shore because over centuries, the sediment has just built up and built up and built up. You might be able to climb up to the top for sweeping views. If it's open, you go in, you just have to mind the spiral stairs because they are narrow as a ship's hatch. It might currently be closed for structural renovations. But if that is the case, it is still worth seeing from the outside, and it's an excellent photo opportunity. You really haven't been to Lisbon until you've had a pastel de nata. For the most famous version, you want to head straight to Pastéis de Belém. Now, this bakery has been making these custard tarts since 1837, using a secret monastic recipe passed down from the nearby Jerónimos monastery. When you get them, they are still warm from the oven. The pastry's crisp and flaky, the filling creamy and caramelized on the top. They just add a dusting of cinnamon, icing sugar. Locals grab boxes by the dozen. Tourists queue, but it moves fast. Now, technically speaking, every tart is a pastel de nata. But if you go to Belém, that is the only place where it can be called a pastel de Belém, and that is where it was created. To wrap up our time out in Belém, Mosteiro dos Jerónimos, the monastery, is the crown jewel of Portugal's age of discovery. It was built in the 1500s. It was funded by spice route riches, designed to impress. A masterpiece of Manueline architecture, all carved stone, rope motifs, maritime flourishes. Inside, it's calm, cavernous. You've got the tombs of Vasco da Gama there, the poet Luis de Camões. They just rest there within these Gothic vaults. The cloisters are particularly stunning, gorgeous for a photograph, intricately sculpted, peacefully symmetrical. Even with the tourists snapping photos, it's still relaxing. It's Portugal's history written in limestone, and it's just across the road from that perfect tart. All right, given that we've got some time to play with in Lisbon, let's look at a couple of options that are a little bit further, but a great idea for a day trip. Sintra is the first obvious choice. It is a fairy tale town tucked into the forested hills. It's just an hour by car or train, packed with palaces, the colourful Palacio de Pena. It's got a wild mix of styles. There's the mysterious Quinta da Regalera, there's secret tunnels, symbolic wells. There's the Gothic Palacio Nacional at the centre, lush gardens, local pastries, sweeping Atlantic views. It's no wonder Lord Byron called this place a glorious Eden. Another option for a day trip, Cascais, a stylish seaside town, all about sunshine, seafood, a slower pace if it can get any slower. Just 40 minutes by train, and you're going to go from the Caisse de Sodre station. And it's cheap. It's about €5 return. Wonderfully scenic. It was once a royal retreat. Now it offers charming streets, sandy beaches, breezy promenades. The top spots, if you're going out here to Cascais, Boca de Inferno, the sea cliffs, the Citadel, the Museo Condes de Gastro Guimarães, and you just stroll around. You go for a swim maybe, go shopping, just enjoy the grilled sardines with a good view. This is where Lisbonites go to unwind. And once you're there, you see exactly why. Let's put them all on a map. You can see two different train stations. There are more train stations than that in Lisbon, but these are the two that are convenient for us for our day trips out. All right, let's move on to Porto, or, anyone know how to say it? Leixos, yes, Leixos. What an amazingly designed port. Look at that building. Wonderful. Anyway, and it's pretty well set up as well. You'll have tourist information inside. The whole building just breathes Wi-Fi. There's a couple of shops inside, taxis outside, and there is a hop-on, hop-off bus that comes right alongside as well, if you would like to grab that. Now, Leixos is the port for Porto, but it is not really in Porto. It's a suburb of, and so if you're looking to go into Porto, and I would make your way to Porto, you're looking at about a 17-minute drive, or you could go by the train, which looks like a tram. So the easiest options for getting there would be grab the hop-on, hop-off bus. It's only about €10. It's not the most pricey hop-on, hop-off bus, and that's going to take you into the town anyway, plus it'll give you a tour of the town. So then you're doing it all rolled into one, get off when you've then done a bit of a loop, and continue to explore. When you're ready to come back to the port, get back on the hop-on, hop-off bus, and it'll bring you back to Leixos. Or, if you prefer to just do it independently, then grab the tram, and it takes about 30 minutes, and you're going to get off at the last stop. So you can't miss it, because the tram goes to Porto. And so two easy ways to get into town from where we're going to be docked. Let's start with this one. The Ribeira district in Porto is its most picture perfect. Narrow cobbled streets, colourful houses, lazy cafe tables just lining the Douro riverbank. And it's one of the city's oldest neighbourhoods. You can feel it immediately in the stone archways, the weathered facades. This is where fishermen once hauled up their catch and merchants loaded barrels of wine to export. But today, it's all about riverside strolls, fresh seafood, and a front row view over that iconic Dom Luis bridge. In the daytime, you can visit the cathedral. You can go to a number of historic churches. This old town centre is really full of historic churches. And it's lively. It's a little bit scruffy around the edges, but it's utterly charming in the way that only Porto can be. World of Wine. Wow. What a website. Wow.Portugal. And they bill themselves with great confidence as the world's best wine museum. Wow, you've got to admire the confidence. Located in Vila de Gaia, just across the river from Porto's historic centre, Wow is a huge cultural complex built inside some old port wine cellars. And there's not just one museum, there are several, covering wine, cork, chocolate, fashion, even the history of Porto itself. Plus, there are restaurants there are wine bars there are those sweeping views back over the Ribeira district on the other side of the river. So I'd say it's part museum, it's part playground for grown-ups. And there's plenty of tasting involved if you'd like it. But this is my sort of playground. Livraria Lelo, is not just a bookshop. This is an experience. It's often called one of the most beautiful bookstores in the world. This 1906 neo-Gothic gem draws crowds to see this beautiful curving wooden staircase, stained glass skylight above it, walls of carved shelves. But here's the kicker. You have to pay to get in. Have you ever had to pay to enter a bookshop before? It's 10 euros. 10 euros to get in. But the ticket acts as a voucher towards any book you buy. And given that we are all pretty fluent in Portuguese by now, rumor has it that Livraria Lelo inspired parts of Harry Potter, although J.K. Rowling herself has said that that's more myth than fact. But either way, it's magical. Clareiros Tower, one of Porto's most recognizable landmarks. A slender, elegant spire that just punches into the skyline like a giant stone corkscrew. It's built in the 18th century by an Italian architect, Niccolao Nasoni, and it was originally part of the Clareiros church complex, served as a guidepost for ships navigating along the Douro River. And today, if you're feeling brave and you've got good knees, you can climb the 225 narrow steps right up to the top, where you get some of the best panoramic views over Porto. It's a bit of a squeeze on the staircase, but the view is absolutely worth it. This is amazing. São Bento Station. It's not just a train station. This is a piece of living history. Step inside, you will be greeted by over 20,000 azulejo tiles. These are traditional Portuguese blue and white ceramics. They tell vivid stories of the country's battles, the kings, the countryside. Now, this station opened in 1916. It's on the site of a former Benedictine monastery, which is how it gets the name São Bento. And it's still a working station today. But half the people standing around aren't catching a train. They're just staring at the walls. It's free to enter, so even if you are not planning on going anywhere, it is worth stepping in here and just soaking it up. Another amazing building, Palácio da Bolsa, the old stock exchange palace. This is Porto showing off its Sunday best. It's built in the 19th century to impress European traders. It's full of grand staircases, carved woodwork, opulent ballrooms. Now, the showstopper is the Arab room. It is dripping in gold leaf. That was all inspired by Moorish design. And it is a room so ornate that it looks like it belongs in a sultan's palace, not a stock exchange. But today, the building hosts tours, concerts, civic events. Even if you're not usually one for just going and seeing an old building, this one is jaw-dropping. It's a place where Porto really made sure that its visitors knew that it meant business. If you want some time outside, Jardins de Palácio de Cristal is where Porto slows down again. It takes a deep breath. Now, it's set higher than the rest of the city. It looks over the Douro River, and these landscape gardens were originally designed in the 19th century around the now demolished Crystal Palace. Today, it's all winding paths, fountains, little shady corners, sweeping views over the water. And locals will come here. They just come here for a picnic, for a jog, just to sit under a tree and let the city buzz below. It's free to enter. It's the perfect antidote if you've already had your fill of climbing towers and chasing down blue and white tiles. It's an oasis of green. Or you might be feeling up for a bit of an adventure. The Porto Bridge climb offers a chance to walk over the arch of the Arabida Bridge. Safely harnessed, of course. This bridge was built in the 1960s. It's a massive concrete bridge, once one of the largest of its kind anywhere in the world. The climb isn't actually too tough. It's about 262 steps. And when you get to the top, you're rewarded with those stunning 360-degree views of Porto from above the river. You'll see the Atlantic Ocean beyond. And this is the only bridge climb in Europe, or at least the only legal bridge climb in Europe. And it's a brilliant way to see the city from a different angle. Now, Portugal is known for its trams, so the Museu de Carro Elétrico is a wonderfully quirky, distinctly Portuguese museum dedicated to in this case Porto's beloved old trams. It's housed in a former power station, and it is packed with beautifully restored vintage electric trams that once rattled through the streets of Porto. You can see the yellow ones. You can climb on board them, get your pictures, admire them really up close, and imagine what travel here felt like in that early 20th century. It's small, it's full of charm. I think it's a love letter to Porto's transport heritage. And if you decide that you're going to ride Tram 1 or Tram 22 around the town, then this is the story behind their journey. And if you're looking for a real slice of Porto life and a great spot for lunch, then head to Mercato de Balao. This historic market, recently renovated, is buzzing with stores selling fresh fish, cheeses, cured meats, fruits, pastries. Upstairs you'll find casual eateries, so you can go and grab a nice plate of grilled sardines for lunch, or a bifana pork sandwich, a bowl of caldo verde soup. It's informal, it's a little bit chaotic, but it's the sort of place where this is what elbows were made for. Yeah. You make your space and you eat up. You come hungry, you leave happy, and maybe you leave carrying a bag of pastries as well. Here's everything on a map for you. In 1679, a shipment of port wine from Portugal, destined for London, ended up in St. John's, Newfoundland. Why? Because it was being chased down by pirates. Here's what happened. The ship, belonging to an English firm, Newman and Company, set sail from Porto, Portugal, bound for London with a precious cargo of port wine. But as fate would have it, the ship was spotted by a French privateer, essentially a government-sanctioned pirate. And in a desperate bid to escape capture, the captain ordered every sail unfurled, pushing the vessel out into the open Atlantic. Well, he might have spotted the privateer, but he hadn't spotted the storm clouds brewing over the open ocean. And the ensuing storm damaged the ship, leaving the crew little choice but to seek refuge. And they found it in the safe harbour of St. John's, Newfoundland, where they spent the winter of 1679 into 1680. Now, when they eased into the harbour, they unloaded their precious cargo of port, and they stored it in these leaky stone cellars on the edge of the docks. When the ship was fixed up, the winter was over, everything was loaded back into the vessel, and the port finally made it to London in the spring of 1680. And that was a big moment for port lovers, because what they discovered was that leaving the oak barrels of port in these damp and leaky cellars over winter in the eastern reaches of Canada made the port develop a smoother, richer flavor. And they liked the port's new profile so much that Newman and Company began intentionally aging their port in Newfoundland right up to 1996. And that was when Portugal really tightened its grip on what was allowed to be called port, and the era of Canadian-aged Portuguese port came to a close. Today, Newman's celebrated port is still produced, but now the whole process, end to end, is done in Portugal, even though the label still often features an antique map of Newfoundland in a nod to the drink's unique history. When you look at it, everything we've explored today, cork, leather, port, you start to realize that they all share one secret ingredient: time. Cork isn't something you can rush. You can't plant a cork oak tree today and hope to harvest it tomorrow. You wait 25 years. And even then, you can only harvest it once every 9 years. Patiently, carefully, respectfully. Leather, too, can't be hurried. The best hides aren't the ones churned out in factories. They're the ones tanned with natural materials, old techniques, stretched, softened slowly until they feel like they've lived before, and then you get your hands on them. And port wine? Well, port wine could teach us all a thing or two about waiting. Sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes it's 40. The barrels sit there quietly in these cool stone lodges while the world outside rushes past. Inside, time is the fourth ingredient, along with grapes, wood, and air, slowly weaving richness and depth into that wine. Portugal knows something that's easy to forget in the fast-paced world that we live in. Good things take time. Great things demand it. And really, isn't that the spirit of what we're doing together now? We're not racing from place to place. We're not ticking boxes just to say we've been. We're giving each experience time to breathe, time to settle, time to soak in. Experience was thus too good to hurry through. Just like a bottle of fine port, just like a sheet of hand-peeled cork, just like a leather bag that will last a lifetime. Some journeys are meant to unfold slowly, carefully, beautifully. So when you're walking the streets of Lisbon or Porto or sitting by the Douro with a glass of something rich in your hand, just remember, you're not wasting time. You're investing it, exactly the way Portugal intended. Thank you.